Welcome to UserAndI, the channel where I explore all things UX and UI design. And today we're going in for a part 2 of me redesigning the landing page of my self-confidence building platform, Faybl. So here's where we left off on part 1, and if I'm honest, I didn't really like what it was communicating. It felt quite cold, it felt quite corporate, so I thought let's go in for another version or another iteration and let's see what we can change and what we can do and what else we can explore. So immediately what I wanted to do was left align the header, left align all the information, and leave some room on the right so I can add an image in, which would definitely soften the feel of the page. I was thinking something along the lines of an illustration maybe, because illustrations always provide a softer feel, but also it just changes the mood of an entire page. And as this is a self-confidence building platform, I thought it'd probably be best to make people feel comfortable when they land on the page. So my next steps was moving this call to action into the section it was actually part of. I just didn't like the way it looked on the previous iteration where it was just on the edge. There was something that didn't look right, there was something that didn't balance the page correctly, and I really wanted to change that. And then after that I was just scaling up a tiny bit just to make sure it stood out amongst the benefits of the platform. Next on the agenda was changing the way this header looked. I wanted to create a different feel for the top of the page. So I was playing around with the custom shapes on the rectangle at the top and just giving it a different style, a different design that would hopefully remove the more corporate feel. I think already, personally, I don't think it screams corporate at the moment because of the design, because of the not so straight or curved edge. So I'm quite happy about that so far. Next thing that I missed out on the previous video was a sentence underneath this quote, just saying who it came from, maybe the author, maybe the platform I used it from, just to tie in a bit more of a social currency. and of course adding a different style on that just so it differentiates from the quote. So I think I went with a medium or a semi-bold here. I really did want to include this arrow, so I started playing around with different areas of where it could look. If I'm honest, I'm not really happy with where it is currently. I wasn't really happy with where it was in the middle, but seeing as I tried it in a few areas, I thought I'd leave that for now. Let's move on to a different section and we'll come back to that. So this is pretty much a zoomed out view of against iteration 1 and iteration 2 so far, and I definitely prefer the top 100%, and I definitely prefer the change I've made to the call to action in the second section. Next it was color exploration. This is something I definitely didn't think. It was something I definitely think the first iteration needed, but at the time I just weren't there at the stage in design. And this is why I like design being a process, because you do one thing and then you come back to it and you can build on it. So I wanted to bring in more color. Again, this platform needed to communicate an emotion or a feeling, and I felt the white didn't do that. So I went here into Adobe Color, which is something I use to build my color schemes. You basically give it a color and it will give you loads of different settings on the far left: complementary, analogous, monochrome, XYZ, and I use that to build out some of my color schemes. So I did really want a yellow, or slight yellow in the background, but then after going into Color, it gave me this blue that I thought, oh, that would be nice to experiment with. So I started playing around with those colors and seeing where I got to. I was still trying to get this arrow to work, but clearly, I think for all of us, at some point, there's just some design elements that we want that just don't work. And I think this is where I was with this arrow. Well, at least in the style it was. It just wasn't communicating what I wanted it to, and I wasn't ready to let go just yet. I'll leave a link to Adobe Color in the description below just in case you want to use it on your next project. If you do, please feel free to let me know how you found it, whether you think it's useful, whether you don't like it. That'll be great. So at this point, I think the blue does look quite calming, but the platform is supposed to, I want it to communicate an uplifting feel and uplifting, encouraging, and I didn't get that from the blue, so I started playing around with brighter colors like the orange that we're seeing now. And this is where I feel like I started to find something, or I started to get closer to the feel I wanted. Saturating those colors a bit more, making it stand out. After doing some research on some color psychology, I knew the colors had to be orangey, maybe yellow, maybe goldy, somewhere in those regions that communicate positivity, growth, uplifting, encouraging, inspiration. That's what this platform is going to be all about, helping people become the best versions of themselves. So I did want the colors to help communicate that as well. I don't know how you guys feel about using black as a body color, but I find for me personally it's quite harsh on the page, so I always try and opt for a dark grey. like a really dark grey that's just not quite black, somewhere like using the hex code 333. And I did like that on here as an example. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. How do you feel about using black as a body color? I guess accessibility comes into play as well, but it does depend on the type of grey you're using. I'd be interested to know what you guys do. Now just playing with the alignment and the spacing. So I did quite like what I had so far. I think this was a definite improvement on the previous iteration. There are some things that I'm still not a huge fan of, but I was definitely at a point where, okay, this was an improvement, and I was happy to continue playing around with this iteration. It did feel a bit disjointed because of the variation of colours. That does look quite distracting. But where I was trying to figure out exactly what the colour scheme was going to be, it was always bound to happen at some point in the process. And this is me trying the off-white from the previous iteration and then concluding that the white looked a lot better. A bit of a zoom out between the two iterations just to see what happened previously and where we are now. What do you guys think in the comments below? It's really good to see the journey of where we're going with this actually. Then I wanted to experiment with returning to the first header that I had, and just seeing whether there's value in that, whether it works. finally got rid of that old arrow that I was forcing at this stage to make work, and I thought I'd take a different approach and just see what else I could bring in and how else I could communicate that there's more content on the page, further down the page. Here we are so far. I've changed the header, I've changed the colors, and this is where we are in terms of our iterations. We've got 4 screens. So from the top, we have room for an illustration. It's now left aligned. We've got the orange color. We have our section, which is now white with orange call to action. We've got the quote, another section, and we've got area for our blog post as well. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you on the final iteration in the next video.